Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Wilder Ride Listener's Lounge. As opposed to our regular podcast where we look at a movie 1 minute at a time, this is our sidecast where we talk to an individual that we find really, really cool and interesting, and we look at their lives 1 moment at a time as we look at their lives and where they are today. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Alan Sanders.
I am one of your hosts, Walt Murray.
And Walt, it is, as we are recording, and I think it'd be both beneficial for both of us to say something, it is Memorial Day. We actually got a guest who was okay recording on a Memorial Day as well. And you and I both recognize the significance of this day, and having seen Doug's video he posted already earlier today, he also understands this is not one of those celebratory in terms of like hooping and hollering and cheering. It really is a somber holiday in terms of its origination, starting off as Decoration Day after the Civil War and eventually evolving into what we now call Memorial Day. It really is about those who paid the ultimate price for the freedoms that we all get to share day in and day out.
Yeah, that's right. And my family is as I've said before, military family. My dad served in Vietnam, and he has friends on the wall. In DC, we have family members who have served and some who've paid the ultimate price. So I have a really keen and deep appreciation for what Memorial Day means. And I'm in the habit when I see, folks out with Operation Desert Storm or World War II or Vietnam hats, just to stop and say, thank you for your service. But today, I don't. Today is the day that we remember those we've lost, and that you're right. It is a somber day, and it's a day also to do some things that those folks fought and died for, to enjoy family, to take a few minutes to pray, to do those other things that we get to do because we're free. But to take a few minutes to remember those folks who we've lost.
I said it this morning on air, and because I get it. It's the unofficial start of summer. A lot of people look to it as that. Here in the south of the Mason-Dixon, most of the schools are already out for summer vacation. There's that sense of a lot of states are opening up. There's a lot of sense of, or at least a desire for a return to normalcy. So I said, look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do things with family and friends and have a good time, but just take a moment to recognize why it is you're able to have that moment of good time, that you can get together, that it is an official holiday. It really was created simply to honor those who died in uniform. I posted a meme that I just really thought encapsulated it perfectly. We have Armed Services Day for those people still wearing the uniform. We have Veterans Day for those people who hung up their uniform. But we have Memorial Day for those people who never got the chance to take off their uniform.
Yeah, that's a powerful thing to think about. And I know that this will drop here either a week or 2 weeks out from Memorial Day. But really, for me, having grown up in the family I grew up in, you growing up in the family you grew up in, it is a daily ritual to remember those who have paid that price and to honor those who serve. So again, thanks to everyone who's put the uniform on and fought for freedom and been willing to serve. And then for those families who have given a loved one, we owe a debt of gratitude that we can never express or repay.
Right. I mean, I did my bit for King and Country. I'm a veteran of the Gulf War, but I had a chance to do that second holiday where I got to hang up the uniform and move on into civilian life and take on a completely different career. My dad died after a lifetime of service in the military, and I posted his mausoleum marker earlier today on my Facebook page in honor of his passing. It's been 4 years now. It's a little weird, parents, age. We all age at some point. They're gone, and it's just still weird when you think about having a holiday without them around.
Yeah, it is, and I'm kind of on my second go round. Having lost my mom a little over a year ago, and with her having both of her brothers having served in the Navy, and it is when you come to these unique holidays, you have an even more intense understanding of what all that means.
Well, before we get too maudlin, because I do want to move us into a different direction before we bring our guest on, it has been a kind of a fun week as we're wrapping up the month of May. Came back from vacation last week, got back into the swing of things, and it looks as though, for some folks who may have followed me on my personal or my public Facebook page, The Alan Sanders Show, the guy that I fill in for from time to time, who is a full-time talk radio personality in Atlanta, managed to negotiate a full-time, syndicated now, national gig, and as part of protecting his brand, fought to be able to have me continue to back him up instead of having a company guy do it. So beginning tomorrow, well, June 1, I'll say, so that way folks won't have to think, tomorrow when I get this, what if I'm listening to it in the middle of like 2025? I'm like, okay, June 1, 2021, he goes nationally syndicated, and I'm already set to fill in for him on June the 11th. So really, really happy, because I was worried that once that happened, that I was not going to be able to fill in for him anymore. So that's, for me, it just feels good career-wise that I still have a platform, and it's going to be national.
Yeah, that's a really awesome opportunity. So I got to fill in for you a couple weeks ago, and that had a footprint of, I think, about 125 feet from the station.
Thousands and thousands of pretend listeners. Yeah, no. Tens of listeners. No,
Tens of listeners.
There are, you know what? Here's the crazy thing about where I broadcast normally the morning show. Between internet listeners and regular listeners on the radio, it's about 30,000 a month that we get to.
Wow. Well, I knew that it was a fairly large audience. And
yeah, it is.
I definitely get some feedback from people who I'm surprised to hear listening.
But now I'm going to move up to millions.
Yeah, this is going to be a great opportunity for you. Either a great opportunity to expand.
Oh, I'm going to totally tank. I'm going to like crash and burn in front of so many people.
Absolutely. An opportunity to totally embarrass yourself.
I will. So. Yes. Before I could contain the damage, now it's going to be like wildfire. So.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun to watch whichever way it goes.
No, I just wanted to mention that because I think it's really, really cool that it proves that, and it has no bearing on what it is you believe one way or the other. Here's a guy who built a listening audience, decided he wanted to do it a particular way, fought for what he wanted to do, never gave up. And it was so easy in this age to just give up, give in to the naysayers, not follow through on your passion. And I love when you see somebody who can stick to their guns and it works out. And I think a lot of our guests we bring on, Walt, have those same backstories of just sticking to your passions, and then things sometimes just work out the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I appreciate about what he did here is he wasn't getting the cooperation from his boss. So instead of sitting down and, oh, woe is me, and look what's happening, why things aren't going my way, he said, fine, hand me the shovel, I'm going to start digging. And
I'm either going to fill my own hole or I'm going to dig my way to China.
Exactly. So,
and that's a scary place to be. A lot of people are too afraid to do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been in business settings where people just, they had great ideas, but just couldn't quite pull the trigger.
The fear of failure, the fear of ridicule, of self-doubt, all of it keeps you from taking that first step for a lot of people.
Well, and I've been in 2 entrepreneurial situations that were successful for a while and didn't end up going the way I hoped they would. Some, probably my fault. Some other people, some market, just, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a scary thing to step out and go, okay, I'm not quite sure where my next paycheck's coming from, but I think that I've got the right stuff to go do this. And it can really pay off in a lot of ways beyond just your checkbook.
Well, one thing I know I will definitely ask our guests, and I'm sure we'll cover, but having a job you love, doing something that you are passionate about, something that you just feel is you're satisfying that inner core voice, that person who you are. There's no way to put a paycheck on it. I mean, it's great to get paid. We all need an income. There's no doubt you've got to pay bills, but there is something to be said about if you can find the job you just love so much, it doesn't feel like you go to work in the morning. I wish that for everybody, because I found it. It took me a while, And I would wish that for everybody, because there is something that's just magical about following your passions and being able to find a way to survive and still do that.
Yeah, and it's funny. I always love talking to my friends who are like, "Oh man, it must be nice being your own boss. You can kind of come and go as you please." It's like,
oh no, you work your. I've worked longer than I've ever worked in my life.
Yeah, I can come and go as I please as long as I work 23 hours a day.
7 days a week. Took 3.5 years before I took a day off for a vacation. Yeah, sure, it's great.
Yeah, it all works out perfectly.
All right. Well, before we bring our guest, Walt, is there anything else that went on this week you want to bring up? Because I brought up my thing. Anything on your end?
No. I'm actually looking really forward to hearing from our guest today.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and set the stage for our guest. I know I introduced him in as a sneak peek at the end of last episode. I've gotten into watching YouTube reaction videos. I'm sure they've been around for years and years and years. And I'm just one of those people who have always used YouTube to, hey, I have to rewire a light switch, or hey, how do I properly fold something into this particular batter I'm making? Or how do I actually grill a particular thing on the big green egg if I'm doing it, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking at it for like how-to videos. And I don't know what happened. I must have watched some videos because I'm a big metalhead from the 80s. I've always enjoyed, the Iron Maidens, the Judas Priest, the Metallicas. I've just been a metalhead my whole life. I've always loved a lot of music, pop rock, bubblegum rock, the whole hair bands of the 80s. I think, Walt, you're very similar in your music tastes. And something happened with YouTube. They've got these algorithms that say, hey, here's a video you might like. So our guest can thank the YouTube algorithms, because I just happened to see the description. Classical composer reviews or reacts to Iron Maiden. I'm like, wait a minute. I love film scores. I love classical music, but I'm a metalhead at heart. And here's a classically trained composer who's going to break down an Iron Maiden song. Okay, click. Next thing I know, I'm just like, subscribe, watch, binge, got caught up. So let's go ahead and bring to our stage, audience, put your hands together and let us bring a YouTube star to our audience, and to you, the listening audience at home, Doug Helvering. Doug, welcome to the Wilder Ride Listeners Lounge.
Hey y'all, how we doing?
Hey,
Thanks for
Doug.
having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I think you and Walt have similar accents. You've got a sense of a Southern accent. Where do you hail from?
So I was born in Houston, and then I lived until I was about 12 in the Little Rock, Arkansas area, and then my family moved to Omaha, Nebraska, where I lived the rest of my high school and undergraduate years. But I use y'all
Yes, you
as a throwback to, not only is it a throwback to like remembering my grandparents and my upbringing, but it is it's a second person pronoun that's not gender specific. So it is. I do have an episode on this, the case for y'all.
I love it. I grew up I grew up in Detroit, so my formative years I learned that non-accent Midwestern accent that I guess everybody strives for in media, and now everybody's saying, no, be colloquial, be regional. Everyone thinks that's great. I'm like, well, this is how I've learned to talk. This is me. But learning to move to Detroit, or moving to Atlanta, learning to say y'all and what's up and all these kinds of things that are sort of friendly and more of the vernacular of the South, is very friendly and all inviting. And there is something about Southern hospitality that is like that.
There you go. Makes me think of like good Southern food too. So there's always something great when you include only words that people in the South can figure out how to say.
Walt, I think I stepped on you and I was responding to that. So you were going to say something?
No, I don't know what y'all were talking about.
Mr. West Virginia.
I found myself saying you guys a lot, and I wanted to, as I was embarking on doing more of these vlog style videos, I wanted to come up with just some sort of style book for myself as to what types of vocabulary I should use and which types of vocabulary I shouldn't. And I just came to the conclusion, if I just say y'all, it's one syllable and it doesn't matter if you're male or female or otherwise. So I just kind of adopted it, and it's fun to say.
Well, and you're right. It is a one of those good cover all your bases words.
It's true.
So let's open, and our audience that's been with us through many of our guests knows usually the very first question after we sort of introduce who we're talking to is, we're talking with a classically trained composer, so we always say, where did you start this journey? At what age were you that you said, you know what? Classical music and composition, I see a future in it for me. When did that start?
Oh man. Well, I got started in music specifically between my 7th and 8th grade year when my family moved to Nebraska. And I remember being in the library with my mom trying to figure out what classes I was going to take. And the choir teacher came through and said, "Hey, you should join choir." I'm like, instead of study hall. And I said, "I have no idea how to sing. I don't think I'd be a good addition." He said, "Well, choir this year is gonna have 36 girls and 5 boys."
Nice
so
ratio.
Said, yeah, there you
go. Where and when do I sign? And I was a sports person. My dad, but both my brother and I, we grew up with, playing any type of sport we could, and we weren't really a musical family. And that was just sort of an outlet right into my teen years that kind of grew and became this neat thing. And then once I had a couple of injuries, I just sort of meandered into it. And then it wasn't really until a couple of years into college where a lot of my friends who were also music majors said, you're pretty decent at this. And so when I won an award or two and then got a couple of pieces published, it was really like, okay, let's give this a shot. And it's been a very rewarding, difficult road, but rewarding, emotionally rewarding, artistically rewarding. And can't imagine not having done it.
So when you realized music was your calling, or at least it seemed to be an avenue to move forward, you went down the road of academia. Obviously, when you're talking about being a music major, music theory, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of folks you can go to. There's a lot of universities. What chose your path toward PhD?
Just kind of luck, really, more than anything, and just serendipity. I bounced around. It wasn't until I was on my 3rd university in 3 semesters as an undergrad until I just kind of lucked into being back at my hometown university. And a bunch of friends from high school continued to be in the choir there. So that was my back into sort of friendships. And luckily enough, one of the country's leading choral music directors and writers happened to be the choir director at that school and sort of took me under his wing. And I got to become one of his copyists. And that's how I really started figuring out how he did what, his craft. And I just ended up developing the skills to learn how to do that during college and loved it. So I thought I'd continue it.
So most people in college, I know that there's a good number of folks, but most people in college start looking at, Van Halen and some of those other, other musical styles as their favorite. What really drew you to that music?
It was different than what I had heard. And so everything was a new experience. Every composer, you get to learn a new person, you get to learn where their point of view is coming from. And then singing in a choir is a very powerful thing. If any of you have ever done it, just singing with people, or even just in general, making music with people. It's powerful enough to be a person in an audience experiencing something that you're really grooving with, but it's even more of a profound experience to be making it in real time. And just singing in a choir just really bonded me to that as an art form. And I loved the complexity of it. I loved the complexity of how the music is put together. So the more parts and the more interesting interweaving I could find, the more it sort of piqued my interest. And so that's why I gravitated in that direction.
All right, so this is a question I have. We generally go sort of let's walk the chronological history, the resume, the curriculum vitae of the guest. but I can't help it because I do have such a passion for music and appreciation of music, having no talent for it beyond appreciation. I said this a long time ago to my friends because they never believed me. I said, if a classic composer like a Beethoven was around today, he would have fully embraced the energy and speed of what you find in a lot of your metal or hard rock bands, because when you listen to Beethoven, they are moving so fast and can play so quickly and have such energy. Why wouldn't they be like the metal guitarists of their age?
It's a fun game to play, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like, if Mozart was alive today, in which branch of music would he be active? Would he be an opera composer like he's kind of known for? I don't think so. I think he'd be a musical theater person. I it's a little bit of a setup because I've studied a lot of these different composers, so I know what their personalities kind of were. I mean, Bach, I think if Bach was alive today, he'd be a church musician, just like he was back in the 1700s. But I think other composers, whether they would have a different type of faith than they did back then, or the way that different patrons would pay for music and the way that music is created, the backstory behind all of it. I mean, you guys know, you look at films in a microscopic way. Every piece of art has a unique backstory as to why it is the way that it is. So I think that a lot of the best composers, or the most known composers from history, if they were alive today, would be not really classical in most cases, the way we think of classical as like a non-stage serious art. I think they would be in film, in like touring around, and maybe even in multimedia stuff. I think they would be drawn to like all of the tools that are available to us now in the 21st century.
Yeah, when you think about where they were at their age, they were reinventing, or certainly putting their stamp on music. And they were doing it because that's what their passions were. And they were experimenting and playing and doing things that no one maybe before them had done. And that's why we have them still today. It's no secret for people who have been listening to me for a while. Beethoven is my favorite composer, but I'll listen to Vivaldi, I can listen to Wagner, I can listen to Bach, and I hear the energy, I hear the passion, I hear the drive. And what's even greater is because I have such a love for cinema and films and film scores, which I didn't know. Maybe I can blame my parents. The very first movie I ever remember seeing live in the theater, 6.5 years old, was watching Star Wars, and the John Williams iconic score hit. And after that point, I was like, Mom, we got to get that music. I mean, what 6.5-year-old is asking their parents, I want to buy the music to the movie we just saw?
Yeah, it's a weird kid.
And not even knowing the difference between scores and classical composition, I just loved the music.
It also proves that kids appreciate good stuff just like adults do, because it would have been the same 6-year-old kid that responded positively to the Charlie Brown and Peanuts stuff, with all of the great jazz music that was put to that. I've read stories about how some of the producers thought that the music was above the kid's head and wanted to move a different way. And of course, you can't think of that those stories without the music that accompanies it.
Well, I think it's interesting when we look back that a lot of that Peanuts music or other music from our childhood, you can play just a few notes and all of us can pick out what it comes from. So we were almost getting a really good musical education without even knowing it when we were growing up.
It's true. And from what Alan was saying earlier, it's interesting. You have to remember that in terms of classical music, if you think of the symphony orchestra itself, they kind of stopped playing new music back in the middle of the 20th century. Classical composers had just sort of taken on this tangent, and they were looking into more and more complex sort of mathematical constructions. And the places where music started to be continually new was in film and radio. and more popular genres. And it's very difficult to look back and say, well, what new composers were being performed 50 years ago this year, so that we can pay homage to the 50th anniversary of a premiere or something. There's very few
right
living composers in 1971 that would have had a premiere with a symphony orchestra, because they just weren't writing music for that ensemble, or that the ensemble just really had no interest in doing the type of music they were writing. But the film scores were just sort of where it just naturally took over. It's where it was at. That there was a mass migration of a lot of American composers during the golden age out to the West Coast and to work in the film industry.
Let me ask you this, your opinion, because you are, classically trained. You looked at the masters, you understand music theory, even the mathematical. I hear you all the time talking about things I have barely a comprehension when you're talking on your videos, and I still love it. Is that a bad thing that they've moved toward that sort of, like you said, multimedia? You mentioned earlier, if our classic composers that we know by name were alive today, they may be doing the exact same thing the John Williams, the Jerry Goldsmiths, the Alan Silvestris are doing, today.
Sure. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it's a thing. It's just something to observe. Back in the late Romantic era, this is going to be the late 1800s, early 1900s, you get somebody like Strauss writing these big tone poems. They were pieces, orchestral pieces, that were designed to be basically a movie soundtrack before movies existed. So I have a feeling that if somebody like that was alive today, they would love to be writing for a great filmmaker who can collaborate with them, or they're creating their own art that's both visual and audio.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Beethoven for a second, because I remember playing for my kids. I said, I need you to close your eyes and listen to the music and tell me, what do you see in your head? Because if I put on his Third Symphony, his Eroica, or I put the Sixth Symphony, his Pastoral, you have very specific images. And maybe it's because we were raised in a movie world versus just an only music world or play world. Because we have movies, I see things in my head when I go back and watch, or listen to those composers. And I feel like that's what they were trying to do, evocatively telling something you could visualize in your head if you just closed your eyes and let your imagination wander.
It's a wonderful way to listen. And I know a lot of people that listen like that. I listen like that. And it's always interesting to compare notes about what visuals we get in our own heads. There's this saying that music is a universal language. And I think it's half right, because each of us get different images in our head for what that particular piece of concert music might mean. The music is universal because I think it reaches all of us, but it's not necessarily a universal language because it's not communicating the exact same thing to each individual, to each person. Each person gets sort of a micro experience based on our own sort of past experiences and what we bring to it. And even it may be different today than when you first listened 15 or 20 years ago.
When somebody like me, who is not well schooled in classical music and things like that, comes to classical music, what would you recommend as a good place to start listening to get a good feel for what classical music is? Maybe something that's easy to listen to and understand. Where would you recommend somebody start?
Wow, that's how many hours do I have?
Wow, that's a great question. And it depends who you ask.
Yeah.
It does. I think that the best classical music for newbies, to put it mildly, are pieces that have that are pretty accessible in terms of their melody and harmonic density. Listening to like Mahler's Resurrection Symphony, you can do, but you can also get lost in like the 8th minute and realize, oh man, there's over an hour left. Should I order snacks? But Mozart is one of our best melodically gifted composers. I love recommending Mozart albums to people. I love recommending Mozart piano albums to people because it's a consistent texture that we're used to hearing. And then we can start to get into. I love also these little concertos that are written in the classical era. The classical era is kind of between the Baroque and the Romantic. It's where it's in like the mid 1700s into like the first part of the 1800s, the true classical era. And we call it that because we've sort of moved into this mature setting of we've agreed on tuning systems pretty much, at least in Western music. And we've all kind of agreed on some which instruments we're going to be writing for and which instruments we're not going to be writing for. It was kind of an arrival point. And they started to break down all the complexity of the Baroque era. If you think about Bach being so complex, well, how is Mozart's music that's, just a few decades afterwards, much easier to listen to in terms of structure and melody? It's because they were responding to how complicated the music had gotten in the previous generations, and it's kind of an easy way in. But another way to really get in is to look at classic cartoons.
Bugs Bunny.
The classic cartoons picked the best pieces for impactful storytelling, and they have great color, and they're not too long. And if you get bored with the music, you've always got Tom and Jerry. So, I would recommend that to people as well.
That's interesting that they did select some very, very easily accessible music for a lot of people, and that music sticks with all of us. As soon as you hear any of it, you're like, "Oh, that was the thing where he was cutting carrots and trying to cook Bugs Bunny." So,
Yep.
we all have that relationship. So interesting.
All right, I'm going to go now to your YouTube channel, The Daily Doug. One of your earlier videos when you were deciding to get into maybe reaction video to music, and I was struck by this, and I've listened to you with, I should say hundreds, but certainly dozens and dozens and dozens of videos since, because you do it daily. Your initial comment that I said, I'm going to remember this if I ever get a chance to interview him. You said, I wasn't really drawn to the electric guitar because it was just a lot of noise. And now you're reviewing Dream Theater, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden that have built their entire sound in that metal / hard rock metal era of the guitar solo. And I've watched you come to appreciate, or at least on your reaction videos, you're like, oh, here comes the solo. Oh, that was a great solo. Did you feel yourself literally learning to appreciate the style of the modern metal artist as you started to really look at it from a classical composer's perspective?
Really, when I think back on it, I think it's just I've gotten more accustomed to hearing power chords and not just responding to them negatively. There's something about the sound of an amplified, just open fifth power chord that was never very interesting to me. From a tone color standpoint, it's just an open fifth, just through an amplifier, and it always clouded for me the nuance of what was going on around it. So I just never liked listening to it. I think I've gotten more practiced at hearing it, and maybe it's because I'm older, I don't know, and just being able to appreciate them for what they are, but listen past them a little bit too if they're getting too overbearing. I would try to listen to the heavier bands growing up, and I would listen for 5 or 8 or 10 minutes and just want to turn it off because I'd had a headache. They just didn't reach me. It loud. Where's all of the interesting nuance and tempo changes and louds and softs and all that sort of stuff and different instruments coming in? And I've realized all that's there.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't giving it a shot. in my young days. And then I got into, making music or trying to make a career of being an academic and being in the arts at the same time. And I just never had time to go back and catch up on what I had missed. And then this past year with the pandemic presented me with the time to do that. So it's kind of been a fun sabbatical year.
This is a chance for you to blame your brother, because when I stumbled across your video, Classic Composer reacts to Iron Maiden, I believe you said it was your brother who suggested, why not react to something that's so out of your wheelhouse that maybe that dissonance of the two fields might actually create something special?
Well, my brother is an astute person. I have 3 academic degrees. My brother has none, and he makes like more than triple what I make because he is an awesome go-getter, and he knows his stuff. Like, I had shied away from doing reaction videos for a long. I first started doing this, I should say, back in the fall of last year, fall of 2020, just as something positive to do with my day during the lockdown, the extended, lockdown once we got into the fall. And my brother kept telling me, you should do a reaction video. You gotta do I'm like, I don't want to do a reaction video. Those are stupid. I really am not a fan generally of reaction videos because I don't need to watch a piece with somebody while they go, oh, that was cool. I'm like, well, tell me why it was cool. And finally, he called me up on a Monday and he said, here's the song you're doing. It's Iron Maiden. It's Fear of the Dark. Just turn it on and tell them why it's cool. I'm like, okay. So at the time, it was late January. It was right after the inauguration, and I had less than 150 subscribers on the channel and tens of people watching occasionally. These were mainly just for me to mark the tape and just do a little vlog. And I look back like 3 or 4 days later, I'm like, why have 5,000 people watched that?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should do another one. And then I did Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. That was my second one. And then people said, hey, have you heard the band of Nightwish? I said, no. Said, hey, maybe you should look at that. And then, fast forward like 5-6 months, and we just hit 70,000 subscribers today.
Wow.
It's been the most crazy few months of my life in terms of like people knowing what I'm doing now instead of just sort of treading along in relative obscurity. But it's been really fun these last few weeks.
You know, it's amazing for somebody like me who, when I saw the Iron Maiden, title card, and then you did Fear of the Dark, which is an amazing song. And then you did Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, which, here's this 14.5-minute homage to the classic poem. And I remember having been assigned to read that poem and going, I'm having such a hard time following it. And my brother goes, oh, that's the name of this Iron Maiden song. I'm like, wait, what? And I started listening to it and I got the lyrics and I'm like, oh my God, I get what's happening now. And then I realized I'm kind of like you in a sense. I sort of came into metal because I accidentally realized it was good. I didn't give it its due because I just dismissed it on the surface. And I have become a fan since, because here's a style of music that doesn't usually get airplay. They usually have to build their audience through fans, through concerts, through touring, through hard work. And they don't mind telling a 15-minute song or an 8-minute song or a 17-minute song based in history, based in poetry, based in literature. And you're like, wait a minute, you guys are metal. What's going on? And I realized there's a lot more to it than just my surface level prejudices.
I've been surprised at how deep these lyrics are. There's some Iron Maiden lyrics that would make great cliff notes for people in like college Western Civ classes, just for the historical record that they contain. So I have kept coming back to Iron Maiden more than any other band, more than anything else, just because I do enjoy the music, but the camaraderie with the Iron Maiden fandom has been real positive, and I love doing things that they ask me to do. So as long as people are interested in my opinion on something, I'm happy to take a look and tell them what I think.
Have you gotten any feedback from members of the band?
No, I've only heard from one person who's actually affiliated with, I would say, a pretty big band. But I have gotten some people sending me like, "Hey, I have a small band that has they don't have very many views or anything like from this corner of the world or that corner of the world," and I'm going to try to get to some of those because they're good too. But I heard from the son of the singer from Gentle Giant, and they've got like a new remastering coming out of one of their classic albums later this summer, and they asked me if I'd take a peek at one or two of the tracks, and of course I was happy to do so.
All right, so for my buddy Walt here, who has probably only maybe skimmed one or two episodes and hasn't really delved as deep as I have, one of the things you do that I just find amazing, because I hear music and I hear what I like, but I can't define what it is I'm hearing. I can't tell you what key, I can't tell you the shift, I can't tell you whether you're moving in tri movements or some of the terminology you use. And then when I see you sitting at the piano and can instantaneously, with your ear, real time, listen and pick up the chords and start playing almost a piano version of the song, and I am blown away as a watcher. And that is what keeps me coming back day after day, not just because it's the music I love, but to hear your analysis. How does that make you feel from a fan of metal?
It makes me feel good that this is sort of a byproduct of what I've been doing for the last 15 years. I am a college professor. I've taught this stuff, and we do with undergraduates who are working to learn music. We do pretty intense ear training. We practice this stuff. I would play what we call harmonic dictations, where I would tell people, here's the top note, here's the bottom note, write what I play. And I'll play like a Bach chorale, and they'd have to write most of it, if not, and practice it. And we would actually grade them on it. And, the 500th or, 1,000th time that you play a certain progression and you're defining it for yourself as you go, you just start to remember what those sound like. It's just a matter of doing that sort of work over and over and over again for a period of years. I don't have perfect pitch. I have what people call relative pitch. Once I have a good sort of reference point for, like, if I can remember that that's a C, I'm pretty sure that it is. Then at whatever first note that I hear, or first really chord that I hear, I can see, okay, well, what does that C sound like in that key? And it's just solfege. It's just relational solfege. So if the first note I hear just happens to be an A, it's a major 6 above the C. So I just, that song's an A. And then once I get there, then it's just following the yellow brick road. It becomes sort of a moving puzzle for me. And it's a fun thing to try to do. It also goes back to my high school days when I first got a keyboard. I would play games like driving home in the car. I would hear a song on the radio and try to pay attention to it. And then when I get home, how closely can I play it off of a hearing? And most of us, I think, could do this. If you have a certain piece or a certain song that's a real favorite of yours that you can think of, you can think of how it sounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you like, if there's a certain song that you can picture in your mind's eye, it has a certain sound to it. So if I picture the Hallelujah chorus or Joy to the World, both of those are in D, da dee da dum, right? So if I hear a chord that reminds me of the Hallelujah chorus or Joy to the World, or Desperado, those are all in D. So it's just building those reference points for yourself and and over time you'll learn to trust them. That's the hard part, is like, I'm saying this. Is it going to be wrong?
Yeah.
I can always, just if I get something wrong, then I'll say it later. or say, hey, I said this, but it's actually this.
So have your students seen many of your videos yet, Doug?
A few of them are starting to figure it out. And that's part of why I've started this, is because I actually lost my teaching gig during COVID.
Oh, awesome.
Right. So I have some students that have reached out to me on Facebook, like Messenger, and said, dude, this is great. But I paid like $30,000 a year for that. You're giving it away for free. What the hell?
You're giving it away for free.
I like. So here's what my wife and I were talking about this last night. Over the last few weeks, I've adopted on Fridays doing what I would consider these really long, complicated, big time pieces. We did Tarkus by ELP this past Friday. And I mean, that's a 20-minute song. That's basically a concerto. It's a 7-movement concerto for a keyboardist, a string player, and a percussionist. And I finally figured out what I'm really doing is just doing play by play.
Right.
We all like, if we tune in to watch a football game on Sunday, we can see what's going on, but it's a helpful experience for us to have someone who's seen a lot of games, who has some different references to pull on, that can say, oh, that just happened. Oh, and that just happened. By the way, here's how those two things are connected. So it's kind of like doing play by play. I grew up listening to the Cubbies on WGN with my grandmother in the Central Time Zone, and listening to Harry Carey, and the Cubs games aren't my recollection of watching the Cubs or hearing the Cubs is also a recollection of hearing Harry Carey, do those games. So it's a fun way for me to be able to not only learn this repertoire that is worthy. It really is. These pieces are lovingly crafted. They're highly complex. They require a lot of skill to play. They're just in a different lane of music than what I had been paying attention to. So it takes the same amount of effort, the same amount of energy to do critical listening than as a classical piece does.
You mentioned Nightwish earlier. I have to thank you for turning me on to a band I had never heard of. And I have been driving my wife nuts with my Amazon speaker at home saying, Alexa, play the hits of Nightwish, because I want to learn more and more and more of them. One of the things you've done for me as a subscriber of your YouTube channel and someone who loves both symphony and metal and rock is exposed me to a band that I had never heard of, who is really symphonic metal. It really is the blending of the two.
They're wonderful. And like I said, I had never heard of them. I'm glad that you like them too.
I was blown away. I've been listening to Nightwish now since I watched one of your videos 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago now, and have just been nonstop listening to Nightwish.
They're a great band. They really are. And I think they have one of the more talented lead singers that's currently working in the world.
Oh, she's freaking amazing.
Yeah, she's pretty phenomenal. That doesn't hurt a band to have someone that's got those kind of pipes.
Yeah. No, somebody who's classically trained in opera and then can still belt it out like metal. I mean, they use that term wink, wink, nudge, nudge, floorgasm, but I mean, Floor is a fantastic singer.
She's great. I've really enjoyed getting to know the band. I didn't know who they were, and everybody, so my first reaction video to them when she first walks on stage, I was like, okay, who's this? It was funny. My first reaction to hearing them, I was like, okay, did Hans Zimmer have a rock band?
Right.
But it's basically, it sounds a little bit like that to me. A little bit less complicated, obviously, than what Hans might use, or the tools that he might use. But I forget the person's name who writes most of their music, but it's very well constructed, and they're a great band. They really are.
Yeah, if anybody listening, I've mentioned them multiple times on these episodes. When we get to the entertainment segment where I'm talking about what I'm listening to, I have mentioned Nightwish multiple times as a result of listening to Doug and another woman who I started listening to, who is the charismatic voice, who she is an opera singer, and she comes at these videos from an opera singer's perspective, and you're coming at it from a classical composer's perspective. So I'm getting like a lot of the similar videos, and I'm like, I'm going to watch his from the music side. I'm going to watch hers from the style of how to perform it side. And I'm like, I feel like I'm learning. I feel like I'm in a public education. I'm getting all of this for free. But you guys are really doing a great job of making it still palatable and digestible for someone who doesn't understand technically everything you're mentioning. When you start talking about your octaves and you're moving into,
Sure,
you use terminology because it's going so fast, you're trying to keep up with it, and yet I'm fascinated because I'm like, this guy is hearing the chords, he's hearing the progression, he's hearing the patterns, he's hearing the change in tempo and the shift and the move, and then you get into the lyrics, and I'm just like, I can't stop watching.
Yeah, it's interesting though, but think about this: if you're a composer and you come up with a sound that's in your head, and you have no way or no skill how to put that down on paper that represents what's in your head, that would it's infuriating. So it's a skill that most people who are active composers are decent at, some more than others, but it's a necessary skill for us to be able to do, and we practice it all the time. I mentioned the Tarkus video from just a few days ago. That's the first one that I found that I was able to follow along with an actual musical score instead of just listening to the end product. And it was wonderful to be able to follow that. It made the novelty of me calling out chords a little bit, not as interesting or not in play, but it really was a lot of fun to me to be able to have that record there to look at. But yeah, we do practice a lot, and I think it's a cultivatable skill. So I think that you could do this if you have a song or that you really like. If you can just look up, a lot of these songs, there are people online that they'll tell you what the chords are, or they'll tell you what the tab is. If you're a guitar player, here's how to play this song. There are some of those videos on YouTube as well. And if you just listen to it and you go, okay, that's that key. Okay, and you're just telling yourself that as you do it, then the next time you hear it, you'll remember that was in that key, or that was that chord. And then you'll remember what it sounds like. And then you're just building up building blocks of reference points that you can pull from. I've just been doing it for 15 years. And I finally started like turning the camera on, and it's basically the same stuff I would do for teaching a classical piece in class. I'm just applying the exact same, in most cases, concepts to popular music instead of classical music.
Well, I was going to ask if you had considered doing this with any other genre or even any other types of rock, classic rock or anything like that. It'd be interesting to hear, what your thoughts are on like Van Halen or the Cars or the Police or any of those other, like 80s bands and things like that. Is that something that's been on your radar at all?
It is. I'm starting to try to get into that, and it's tricky with the YouTube channel because a lot of people have sort of attached themselves to it, which is wonderful. But they're all like, they got mad last week when I didn't do an Iron Maiden song on Monday. I had done an Iron Maiden song like every month and made it Maiden Monday.
Well, I mean, that's kind of your fault. You kept calling it Maiden Monday, so you like branded it as Maiden Monday.
and then I thought, oh crap, do I do it? So last week I wanted to do an entire week where I was trying to get to as many bands as I could that I hadn't had yet on the channel. And the Maiden fans were like, dude, we're still here. So we went back to Iron Maiden today. But I've done like Alison Krauss and Barry Gibb doing a version of the class. Gosh, what was that song? Brain fart. Too Much Heaven. The classic songs by the Bee Gees. I did the Eva Cassidy cover of Fields of Gold a week or two ago. I'm very much interested in as many different styles of music as there are, and I don't mind reacting to any bit of them. The one thing that I know is that we're not running out of repertoire, so we could keep doing this for quite a while. And if there's something you want to hear, just send me a note. We'll see.
I'm going to have to do that, because there are two things that I'd like to hear: is some of those old great '80s bands, and then just some shitty music that we hate, and get you to take a look at some of those and see what you think.
Like what, Walt? What would be something you hate?
Like that stupid song, like "Hey Mickey."
That's an idea for a YouTube channel. Why this song sucks. You
got Tony Basil. Hey Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind.
It wouldn't take long to get to why some of them are terrible, but
hey, you know what?
It would be entertaining.
An earworm is an earworm. Sometimes you have no idea why something drills in your head, and you just can't not stop banging your head to it.
Somebody basically dared me to do this song called "Through the Fire and Flames" by a band called Dragon Force. I had no idea that they were like it was like one of the top levels on Guitar Hero. I'm not a gamer, and I turned this on, and it's like the speediest of speed metal. And I look back at the camera, and I'm going, what did I just get myself into? This is not good.
Yeah, no. All right, so here's an actual question, because now that you realize you've built an influencer channel, you've got so many people and you're gaining subscribers literally by the day. Do you feel any pressure to still find merit, even if it's something you don't like?
No. And actually, it was my experience with that song I was just talking about, that somebody's like, I can do it nicely. I can say, hey, thank you for recommending this song. It is not my favorite. It is not my favorite for these, 5 bulleted item listings. And say, it's just not my cup of tea. And there were people that responded in the comments that said, you being willing to say that, that's not your favorite, and not just be a shill for whatever it comes your way, just to try to gain favor with whatever fan base might be out there, gives me a credibility that I didn't otherwise have. That being said, if I came out and, I've done all these different Iron Maiden videos, if I came out next week and go, this one I really didn't like, I don't know how that would go over.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, you've always got the option of saying, look, in a catalog of thousands or hundreds of songs over the course of decades, not everyone's going to be the masterpiece.
It's true.
Hey, look, I am an Iron Maiden fan, but I know there's a couple of songs I go, yeah, I'm just going to fast forward to the next one, because this is the weak one on the album. But you know what? I think what you said is absolutely great. Is if you're being honest with your listeners, with your watchers, with people who have decided to subscribe to you, as long as you remember to stay true to your core and honest, they'll appreciate it. Whether or not they agree with you on a song, that's irrelevant. The fact that you're staying true to the song and true to who you are is more important.
Sure. Have a take. That's a couple things that I've learned is that I need to have a take and then be able to back it up. And to be and engage in just general decorum and be who I am. It's really serendipitous that the timing of being able to talk into my iPhone while I'm recording the screen on my computer, and a bunch of people find that interesting. And with me just using the skills that I've accumulated over these past couple decades and find it interesting is just a matter of luck, really. And I'm extremely grateful for it. I'm starting to I was looking for jobs, and I'm kind of not anymore because this is starting to be something that can help us to help me to support my family. The copyright stuff on YouTube is insane and drives me crazy every day. But YouTube's where the people are.
Right. No, I mentioned this to a different guy. We interviewed a guy last week who is a up and coming film composer, and he was so terrified. He has a podcast. He and his wife, who is also classically trained, they want to talk about movie soundtracks because that's his business, and yet he's afraid to put any music because he doesn't want to get banned. And I'm like, well, there is such thing as fair use, and I get it. They're the algorithms on YouTube that really are just there monitoring. They're not really a person. It's infuriating, but I think at some point YouTube's going to have to catch up to the real world. When you're just reviewing something and people love it and they flock to you, well, that's great. The people that you're reviewing should be happy that you're using pieces of their music. I get you're not trying to sell their music as your own, or you're not trying to make money on their music. What you're doing is you're monetizing your knowledge of how to look at their music, and there should be a place for that.
We have always used art to teach art.
Mm-hmm.
The difference now is that we're on a platform that is sort of micro monetizable. So last week I did a whole bunch of people have been asking me to do a song by the band King Crimson, and I'm relatively unfamiliar with them. And I was very intrigued. So I finally did one of their songs. I was very intrigued by it. It was actually one of my more favorite ones I've done in the past few weeks. And it went up, and everybody said, it's going to be taken down. Just trust us. And literally 12 hours later, because the people that are in the band are in England, the next day or overnight, blocked worldwide. And gosh, I've been doing like 5 videos to 6 videos a week since January, and I would say 90+ % of them have copyright claims. Probably 80% plus I'm not able to make money on them. I get a copyright claim for virtually every video that I do, and I dispute every single one that I do because it is covered by fair use laws in the United States. Right. I'm transforming and elevating the original material. I would do the same thing in a classroom. Now it's just on a platform where, it's monetizable in that way. And I think it's going to be difficult to get caught up, but I hope that they do soon.
I hope so, because honestly, if anything COVID taught us is that you can still do what you do virtually. You can still have an audience. You can still have a classroom. You can still have people you reach online. And just because it's online doesn't mean that you're pirating their music. It doesn't mean you're stealing. The fact is, I read this just the other day. The Back to the Future, the first of the 3 movies, is still taught to this day in screenwriting as one of the most perfect scripts, that it does what it's supposed to do when you're teaching script writing. Well, of course, like you said, you use art to teach art. How? I'm not going to use some piece of crap as my explanation of what not to do. I'd rather show you, here's the script that really does what you're supposed to do. So here's what you're going to learn from it,
Yeah. If we're reduced to only including stuff that's in the public domain, then none of our artists will be cutting edge.
That's true.
Or be innovators. And it's a real problem. There's nothing that I'm doing, as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing if I, like we did Close to the Edge by Yes. And it's one of my favorite episodes that I've done. But that song is almost 50 years old. And my reviewing that track and telling people how it works or why it works, and then showing like how someone like me might experience it, in no way violates their ability to make money.
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
And it might actually enhance it.
No, exactly.
Yeah, I would think so.
I would argue if you're like somebody like me, the reason I started downloading and buying Nightwish songs is because I watched you review and react to the creative genius of Nightwish. Like,
sure.
You're helping somebody like me, and I guarantee thousands of other people like me. I'm not the only one. Because of your channel, I'm experiencing new music and buying new music and subscribing to music that I wouldn't have had it not been for you. So the industry has to really catch up.
Well, and I can't tell you how many people came to me after we did our first 2 seasons of our podcast and broke down Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles, and people came to me, they're like, I'd either never seen those movies or I haven't seen them in 25 years, but I watched them because of your show. And I'm sure you get that feedback all the time. They've got to catch on to the fact that this is a way to advertise and monetize stuff. And I don't know why they don't reach out to you and say, hey, could you do our,
Yeah, exactly.
our song? Could you do this?
I don't think they understand how YouTube actually works.
Not yet. No.
If they did understand how it works, I think that they would start to come around. I just don't think. I think they're stuck in. We make tangible pieces of vinyl or cassette tapes or CDs, and that's our intellectual property. And then they tie like that intellectual property to the sounds themselves. And whenever if I'm going to make money on it, well, they're going to make money on it first.
Right.
Is I think what they're coming to.
Right.
But
well, you know what? We all got burned by the Napster era where everybody was pirating music and sharing music. That's a completely different scenario than what we're doing here on YouTube.
Sure.
So before we, and we're starting to run out of time in our interview, but by the way, this has been such an amazing discussion, and having somebody with your background, your knowledge, and the fact that you've taken what you do in the classroom and taken it online and just exploded. You're over 70,000 followers at this point and continuing to grow. I got to ask you, how does it feel for you to suddenly be an influencer, or at least a micro influencer?
Feels like I need to invest in a better haircut. I tell people I'm not even that pretty.
That's why I'm in radio, dude.
It's the weirdest feeling. It really is. I have not been recognized in public at all yet, but academics, we toil away in relative obscurity. Occasionally, a few hundred people or a few thousand people might see us on stage. But composing is a very solitary activity. You're just alone, and normally without any sound, because the sound's all in your head and you're trying to make sense of it, like for hours at a time, trying to make sense of what you want to say artistically. And then for this to sort of happen, and now it's like, okay, there's a real audience that's taking hold. The experience of doing these is really no different than the adrenaline that you get standing up in front of 30 to 35 college underclassmen, and they expect you to be able to hold their attention for 60 minutes. So you develop humor, you develop a little bit of wit, you develop the pacing of when you need to slow down and remind people, hey, are you with me? Okay, we're going to keep going. It's just, if you're a teacher at heart and you're trying to make it as easy for those that are tuning in to follow you and to learn something, then if you're paying attention, then you'll pick up little things over time. And it was just a luck of timing that the technology is what it is, and it was a relatively easy entry point into doing it. And I'm excited to keep going and see where it leads.
All right, as we start to wind down the interview portion, a couple of questions I have left. One, we did talk about film composers and how that's sort of like the age of where our classic composers have gone today. They're not writing classic pieces to play just for an orchestra. They're playing them for the film, and then you go buy the soundtrack. From your perspective, you're a classically trained composer. You try to write things like that. You try to put some things together. Have you ever thought about maybe moving toward film composition?
I would love to. I would absolutely love to. I've done some this past year with these piano meditations. That's also available on my channel. I've gotten to the point where I really like doing improvisations. And through a mutual friend, I've really gotten into this like sort of deep listening style of music. And I've got to create music in real time to video that's already available to me. Like some of these, like it's more like landscapes and seascapes and interesting images, but I'm reacting to what I see. And it really is an exciting way to make music. And I would love to work in film. If someone would want to partner with me. That's an open ask for anybody. I'm just kidding.
Insert ad here.
True.
Hey, we're not above shameless plugs.
Amen.
So, well, what do you see? What direction do you see your podcast and or your YouTube channel going in the future? Do you think you're going to stay on this path for a little while, or do you think you're going to bring in some other elements? Where do you think you're going?
I am starting to think about other elements. We are thinking about. I desperately have to redo my website because it doesn't even mention this. That's how new it is, and how how much time I've been spending on this instead of the other stuff. I would like to open up a Patreon. I like the idea. Like, we've had ideas and brainstorming sessions. Well, how cool would it be if I can use the music of this particular band to teach what basically is musicianship 1 or musicianship 2, like just functional harmony at the college level, and do it as a course online. Or what if we went to a different site and did a live listen in to an entire side of an album, or an entire album, that sort of thing. And we can chat and do live stuff as we go. All that is, I see just continuing to build the community and be open to where the community decides it wants to go. I'm a teacher at heart, and I love experiencing new music, but I also love teaching the music that I already know. So the sky's the limit for us, and music is not going away as something that can tie us together. So I'm really happy to be in the space, and we'll see where it leads.
Well, personally, I really hope you continue on, simply because you bring a zeal and a fire, and I think that is that teaching component that helps somebody who, like me, who knows these songs inside and out, and yet you're bringing something completely new from a completely different perspective. And yet I'm giddy watching somebody who's saying, I'm hearing this for the first time. I'm like, ooh, you're in for a surprise. So it's as much tangible for me as the watcher as I am learning from you, who is the classically trained musician. It's almost a weird symbiotic relationship without anybody really talking to one another.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I wish that I could, knowing what I know now, that I could go back and experience the Harry Potter films for the first time. I wish that I could go back and watch the Back to the Future trilogy for the first time. And the kids that are good at what they're doing and doing these reaction videos, you can you can have a similar experience, or at least be in the same space with somebody who is having that experience, and it makes you feel better.
It does. It really, I've become addicted to both music reaction and movie reaction. There's a lot of younger people who are saying, hey, I've never seen this movie, Star Wars. I've never seen Back to the Future. And I'll watch and just get giddy watching them react to a movie that I know by heart. It's just, it's an amazing experience.
And they get mad when they don't catch that one little spot in the like, how dare you miss that obvious, error in the editing.
Or when someone says, is that Samuel L. Jackson? I don't think that's, I'm like, yes, it's Samuel L. Jackson. I'm like yelling at the screen.
Funny.
All right. Doug, you're going to hang out with us for a little bit. You said you've got some time, and
sure.
We definitely have appreciated you spending time with us, because I know you do this every single day. You put a video out. We'll do it now, and then we'll do it at the end as you're hanging with us. But for folks,
let me say this: our schedule basically is Monday through Friday. I try to do at least one video Monday through Friday, and if we get others, then that's
bonus.
Bonus week.
For folks who are brand new, they're listening to us, they're listening to you for the very first time, they want to go find your videos, they want to sort of do the same thing I did, go down that rabbit trail and lose an entire afternoon, and then next thing you know, it's days and days and days. Where can people find your channel?
Well, the easiest one is YouTube. My name is Doug Helvering, and the last name is spelled Helvering. You type me in, and my channel is R. Douglas Helvering. That's my doctoral name, if you want to say that. And on my channel, I have several playlists. I have original works. If you want to listen to stuff that I have written that people have recorded, I've got original recordings of my piano stuff, and the Daily Doug, which is my vlog that has all of these music reaction videos in them. There's more than just the reaction videos on the vlog. I've got a couple other types of things in there, but mostly we're doing these reaction videos. And if you like put me in the Google machine, you'll find my website. It's rdouglashelvering.com. I'm active on Facebook and Twitter. I'm having Instagram issues, but I hope to get back on Instagram soon.
Folks, I'm telling you, stumbled across it just because YouTube recommended, say, hey, based on what you've played and searched for before, you might like this guy. Not only were they right, they were 100% right. I have loved all the video work that's been done, all the analysis. Even if it's a song I'm not 100% behind, I still love the reaction to it. So check out the Daily Doug. Walt, do you have anything else before we move on to our next segment?
No, I think I have definitely exhausted my musical questions, but I've definitely learned a lot too, and I'm going to check out more of your videos. I've enjoyed the 2 or 3 that I've watched so far, and
I do have a Van Halen one, by the way.
Which one did you do? I haven't seen that one yet.
So I did Jump, but I did a cover of it.
Somebody else is from the UK who did the entire thing by himself, which was incredible.
Wow.
An acoustic guitar player who is just otherworldly. And so it was, I think it was on the anniversary of either Eddie's death or something having to do with, or maybe it was just that I had found this particular performance and thought it was awesome and wanted to lift it up. But yeah, it's a really fun episode.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out.
When you watch Walt, when you watch this guy play Jump from an acoustic guitar, but play all the parts, everything by himself, and just, I'm like, how does somebody have that much musical ability on just one instrument? It's ridiculous. It's like, he's fooling me, but no, he's playing it, and it's just amazing.
That's crazy.
So, all right, well, let us move. Now, normally we would do a movie segment here, but because it is Memorial Day, Walt, I'm going to take and I know this episode is going to come out a little after Memorial Day, so this might put all of us on a little bit of edge, but I'll go first. Rather than review a horrible movie, we'll do that for next week. I just wanted to do some recommendations of some of our favorite, and I say favorite not in the sense because we're glorifying, but favorite because it makes us feel something, it makes us understand something or appreciate what people have done that wore the uniform. I'd like to suggest we maybe pick a couple of our favorite movies that have to do with war or are emblematic or symbolic of the war, of soldiers, of warriors, of what they've gone through. So rather than a review, do you mind holding till next week and let's just kind of put some of our favorite war movies out there?
No, I think that's a very appropriate thing to do.
So I'll go first. My overall number one since I was a kid, and probably because when I saw it as a kid with my dad, and it did something to me, just like seeing Star Wars in the cinema the very first time as a kid and seeing Star Trek and seeing, Jaws. It just became like, that's my core. My all-time favorite World War II, but it's a biopic, is Patton. If you have never seen George C. Scott portray George S. Patton, you are in for a treat. Written by a young Francis Ford Coppola, and George C. Scott you want to talk about somebody who disappears into a role, check out Patton. So that is my number one overall pick. Obviously, the tie from Memorial Day, you need to see Saving Private Ryan, Spielberg's brilliant World War II flick. Just the opening, visiting the cemetery, and then how it circles back around. That is what Memorial Day is all about. That is well worth watching. And I'm going to give just a couple others that you may not have seen in the theater because of when COVID hit, and I'm not sure how much airplay it got. 1917, the Sam Mendes World War I movie, where he uses the same trick he used when he directed the James Bond flick, where he did one continuous shot for about 8 to 10 minutes of the opening movie. He took that one step further and shot an entire movie where it feels like the camera never stops following. It's almost like you're watching in real time, almost like a play, the actors moving from one trench to the next to get word to another group of the army about whether or not they should be attacking the next position. 1917, an unbelievably good war movie. My final one that actually reveres what it is to be a conscientious objector, and yet somebody who wants to be patriotic and support his country and wants to do what he can to support his fellow soldier. Hacksaw Ridge, directed by Mel Gibson with Andrew Garfield in the lead role. You know, the first third of the movie, you think you're watching a romance novel take place on screen because of how sweet it is. The second, you think you're in a boot camp movie like Full Metal Jacket because of how they treat them. And then it turns into a Spielberg bloodbath when they're trying to take the ridge. Unbelievably good movie. And I am left, wet-eyed and weeping almost every single time I watch that movie.
Yeah, I agree with you on all those. I think I'll mention 4 real quick. We Were Soldiers. If you've never seen that Vietnam era movie, 2 of the helicopter pilots in that battle got the Medal of Honor. It is one of the most harrowing battles in American history. And it is the first time that we flew troops in helicopters into a combat zone. For a mass movement and mass battle. It is one of the most shocking books you'll ever read for a couple of reasons. The movie ends with them finishing out the first battle and pulling most of the men out in helicopters. Another contingent marched out and they got ambushed and they took horrific losses. And so the book goes into more detail, but We Were Soldiers really gives us a good idea of what Vietnam's like. Two Pacific War of World War II, one of them, the movie Midway from the 1970s, has always been one of my favorites. And it talks about the Battle of Midway. Also, another one by the same name, Midway, that came out about 2 or 3 years ago. Same battle, same men, just a little bit different depiction. And when you see that movie, you feel like you are pushing the stick forward and dive bombing those ships and flying those planes. Both of those movies are great, historically pretty accurate, and well worth your time and make you appreciate things. And then finally, another one. This one does not get the kudos and the recognition that it needs. But there's a movie from the 70s called A Bridge Too Far.
Oh, great movie.
Great movie. And basically every star of that era, every male star of that era is in this movie. I mean, go to IMDb and look up A Bridge Too Far. It is absolutely incredible who is in this movie. And it is just an absolutely amazing portrayal of what happened on D-Day and following. And you really kind of feel the horrors of war, but also the heroism of the men who went to war in World War II. So, those 4 movies, I think, to me, encapsulate a lot of what Memorial Day is all about, the camaraderie that you see among the men who fight, men and women now who fight on behalf of our country. And so just some fantastic movies and well worth your time.
Doug, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to join in. Are there any movies in this genre that you would recommend on a Memorial Day?
Oh, it's probably too late for Memorial Day, but Band of Brothers as a miniseries is just so moving. I'll be honest, a lot of the heavy action in these military movies really affects me emotionally. They're very difficult for me to watch, so I tend to like looking at the movies that show us sort of the human side, the human element of that. I think of like MASH, of how those guys dealt with things, and even Lieutenant Dan's story through Forrest Gump.
It's funny. We had a caller this past weekend who said, even though it's only a small part, but the Vietnam sequence of Forrest Gump is very, very emotional and evocative for what it did to not only Forrest, but to Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah, and to see how he coped with it for years after that, it really is a neat look into what it means to be a person of service.
Yeah. No, I can't disagree with those. Any other ones that you would throw out there?
Gosh, that's all I got for right now.
Band of Brothers is and if you're an HBO Max subscriber right now, Band of Brothers is available. If you've never caught it before, great 10-part miniseries. It is phenomenal. All right, Well, let's move to a more of a lighthearted moment for a second. We'll let Doug riff as he feels compelled based on what we're talking about. It's a news segment, and we know it's got to be real because we found these news stories on the internet. It's a segment we like to call... It's No Bullshit. And Walt, you've got the first news story.
I do, and let me just preface this one, just so you understand what's going on here. When they say doctors in this headline, it's plural. So just... bear with me. This will make more sense as we go. Omaha doctors get a divorce, but can't agree on when or whether they got married.
Brutal.
When or whether.
I grew up in Omaha. Does meth come into the story at all?
You would think it does.
Okay, then I'm out of conspiracy theories.
Well, forget about spacing off an anniversary date. Two Omaha doctors can't even agree on when or whether or where they were married. The husband, Dr. Trayon Alley, questions whether he was officially married. His former wife, Dr. Patricia Sievert, insists they were married twice, once on a beach in Hawaii and once in their living room in Omaha. The contentiousness over such a simple fact, when and whether they got married, was just part of a case that took the wedding cake. The couple's $1 million divorce out of Douglas County went all the way to the Nebraska Supreme Court for the high court to decide, among other things, their actual wedding date.
Oh, my God.
In essence, the Supreme Court recently ruled it is not enough for a couple to live together for decades, have 4 children together, file taxes together, and tell anyone who listens that they are together.
Inconceivable.
Nope, the high court says. State law requires them to formalize their marriage through a marriage license, a certificate of marriage, and a ceremony presided over by a licensed officiant.
Wow.
In its May 21st ruling, the Nebraska Supreme Court seemed to suggest that it wasn't entirely satisfied with the way the state law spells out what constitutes marriage. In reaching this conclusion, we are not without sympathy for the family. Nebraska Supreme Court Judge Jonathan Pitlick wrote on behalf of the unanimous court. Ali admits that even he believed he was lawfully married in 1996 and represented that was the case to everyone from the IRS, lenders, and employers to family and friends.
Like for years.
For years. As we have previously explained, however, any expansion of the state's marriage principles is the province of the legislature rather than the court. So anyway, this keeps going through all kinds of problems, and it closes with, a lot of times people don't think of the consequences of not being technically married until they realize they're going to get a divorce. says
all
Kenny.
Of this just so he could keep his yacht.
I think that's where this one was going.
Oh my God.
These two took a devil-may-care attitude towards certifying their marriage, and it ended up biting her. I haven't seen anything quite like it.
It's no bullshit.
Wow. So there's no such thing as common law marriage anymore, obviously. If you don't
Not
file
anymore.
the paperwork, it
Not
doesn't
even
matter.
in Nebraska.
No. And when it goes in Nebraska, I mean, what does that tell us?
Wow. Well,
No comment.
then go husk some corn.
Yeah, so if you have a devil-may-care attitude about your marriage, it might be time to get some paperwork done.
Dear Lord. You know, it's so funny. I remember we used to do a financial talk show, and the number of people who would be so angry at a spouse because they would have gotten divorced, then got remarried, and then for whatever reason, their spouse passes away and they forgot to change the beneficiary on their insurance policies, and the ex-wife is getting all the money and the current wife has no leg to stand on it because they just didn't bother to look at the paperwork.
Right?
That's crazy. People are just dumb. That's why I love my dogs. My dogs, they may be simple, but my dogs just are so loving. I don't have to worry about them.
And they have no paperwork on you.
And no paperwork. All right. Well, I've got one. We're going to stay in the Midwest. I've got one here. Man sets his neighbor's house on fire for a strange reason. I read the headline further. An Iowa man has decided he needed to set his neighbor's house on fire Saturday, not because of something they did, but because of something they didn't do.
Do you mind telling me what this is all about, mister?
He was mad because apparently they chose not to mow his lawn.
Oh.
Yeah. Police were called to the house around 6 p.m. because of the flames. Lee Bowman, age 53 of Sioux City, admitted he was upset because he had asked his neighbors to mow his lawn Saturday, but they didn't get around to it. By Sunday, they still hadn't mown his lawn, so he went over and asked when would they mow it. Surveillance videos show he tried to take a registration sticker off of one of their vehicles. I don't know what that's all about. The fire then was discovered by a neighbor. That neighbor banged on their door, alerting them to the situation. The corner of the house had been burned, causing about $3,000 in damage. After investigating, it was determined the cause of the fire was, in fact, arson, and that sticks and plywood had been propped up against the house and lit with an accelerant that started the fire.
Oh.
I'm still going with meth on this one.
It could be.
I think meth has a high
Drugs
possibility.
may, in fact, be involved. Bowman was arrested and charged with first-degree arson and criminal mischief and is in jail on $20,000 bail. Now, don't you think you could have, bought your own lawnmower for less than $20,000?
Definitely.
This isn't the only case of house fire setting, apparently, in this area. Earlier this May, a Richland man's neighbor set his neighbor's house on fire while he was burning weeds. The fire spread to the neighbor's attic, badly damaging the attic and the roof. Firefighters kept the fire from destroying, the rest of the house. The man burning the weeds was monitoring the situation but didn't realize how fast the flames would spread or how dry the climate had been. The comment that wraps up this story: don't start a forest fire, and especially don't start a neighbor's house fire when you are arguing over petty bullshit.
It's no bullshit.
Good advice.
And I didn't mow the lawn. All I got was grounded.
Exactly. I don't know that I want to live next door to somebody who feels like the appropriate retribution for not cutting his lawn is to burn my house down.
Well, I don't know. I mean, tough love. It has merits.
Yeah. Well, teach them.
Okay, well, we always have to go to Florida, right?
Gotta have the Florida man.
Well, and this is a very unique Florida man. WFLA.com out of Pasco County, quote unquote, Mr. Florida steals White Claws, scissors, animal pain medication, and Zephyr Hills multi-business robberies. This one has a strange twist, however. Pasco County, Florida, WFLA. A man is now behind bars after police say he went on a burglary spree at multiple businesses and residences in Zephyr Hills. Police say early Sunday morning, a man identified as Lawrence Franklin King, Florida.
No, his name is Florida.
His name is Florida.
You cannot make this up.
Or is it Flo Rida?
Flo Rida.
Well, if the state can be named Florida, I'll go with that.
There you go.
This man is Mr. Florida. He went into the backyard of the Great Catch restaurant, opened the freezer, and threw all the White Claw alcoholic beverages and beers into a retention pond behind the business. According to police, Florida then walked to Massey's Barbershop, located at 5336th Street, Zephyr Hills, broke a side window, entered the business, took a set of clippers and a charging stand. A release from the police say he then walked to Lisa's Barbershop across the street and broke the front glass. Once inside, he stole 5 clippers and 2 pairs of scissors valued at $1,000. Police say he continued his burglary spree at Carpet and Floor Source at 5526 Boulevard, where he broke his side window and went inside. Nothing is reported missing at this location. According to the Zephyr Hills Police Department, Florida then walked to Living Foods Bakery and Cafe, located on 10th Avenue, and broke a side door glass window, went inside the business, and stole approximately $800 in cash, jackets, coins, cash bags, and keys.
This guy was having an enjoyable evening.
Yeah, well, listen to this genius. A pair of antique scissors from Lisa's barbershop were found in the carport of this business.
So he's leaving a trail. Nice trail of breadcrumbs for police.
The two crimes together.
Nice. What an idiot.
Officers say he continued on to Zephyr Hills Veterinary Clinic, located also on Gall Boulevard, where he broke a window on the west side of the building, which triggered the alarm. Nothing is reported missing at this time. Keys and a bag of coins were found in the dumpster of the clinic, which belonged to Farm Fresh. So each crime, he's leaving evidence from other crimes.
Wow.
Remember, we're the wet bandits.
That's right.
we got to have a thing.
So that they always know it's us.
Yeah.
Florida furthered his adventures to Little Cat Rescue, where he broke into a shed in the backyard and stole cat wormers, animal pain meds, and syringes. I have no idea what a cat wormer is, but somebody can tell us.
Well, it's a medicine for worming.
Yeah, I guess so. One of the officers of ZPD responded to the report around 5:30 a.m. that someone pulled a homeowner's ring bell doorbell off of 12th Avenue. The homeowner identified Florida as the suspect, who is also one of his neighbors.
Oh, dear Lord. He didn't even go to a different neighborhood.
Police say Florida also broke into a truck located off of 9th Street and stole some tools that were in a briefcase. Now get this, during a post-Miranda interview with officers, police say Florida admitted to breaking into all of the above-listed locations and agreed to walk officers around to where he dumped the stolen items.
Y'all want to see where I've been?
Yes,
I
thank
just keep
you,
waiting
Mr.
for
Florida.
you to bring up that Joe Exotic is somehow.
I'm assuming close relatives.
There you go.
Oh, my gosh.
So Florida man just being Florida man.
It's no bullshit.
Wow, you can't, and there's no denying he is Florida Man. That is his name.
100%.
All right, we got to end on a positive note because it is Memorial Day. I did stumble across this from the UPI. I think here is one of our very few feel-good stories for these typical crazy news items, but I still think it's kind of crazy just in a positive way. 97-year-old World War II vet earns college degree in Illinois.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, an Illinois man who left college to go serve World War II finally returned to finish his education 80 years later.
Wow.
What a story. This is for our college PhD. This has got to, warm the cockles of your heart. Bill Gossett, age 97, attended Lincoln College for a short time before transferring to the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, before he ended up joining the U.S. Army Air Corps before finishing a degree. Gossett returned from the war and then took over the family business, Gossett's Cleaners, instead of returning to school. He said, quote, "There was always a void there, but I was busy learning to run a business. Time went by and I finally decided to finish my degree. It was a goal of self-fulfillment," Gossett said in a news release. Gossett approached Lincoln College officials about returning to the school to finish his associate's degree. In 2019, Mr. Gossett came to me and said he wanted to finish his associates at Lincoln College, said Lincoln College President David Gerlach. After meeting with the registrar's office, we determined Gossett could, in fact, re-enroll as a reverse transfer student with prior learning assessment credits. We were inspired by his desire to obtain a degree 80 years after he began his education.
Amazing.
Gossett completed his Associate of Arts degree in 2020, but had to wait for the 2021 graduation ceremony thanks to COVID. Gerlach surprised Gossett at the ceremony with an honorary doctorate of humane letters.
It's amazing. It's astounding. But it's no bullshit.
That's awesome.
What a great
That's so
feel-good
cool.
story.
Absolutely. That's fantastic.
Really great. Education, I always tell people the farther you go in education with degree stuff, the more you realize the less you know. Because there's always a new layer to the onion to try to come up with. But good for that guy.
Yeah. I figured, you know what? We always do crazy, weird, wild criminals or dumb behavior. With Memorial Day being the day we're recording, I wanted to do one about a World War II vet, 97, getting his degree. Don't tell me it's too late to go to college when you got a guy in the news doing that.
I hope
That's
he's got the
really
job
crazy.
placement counselor really working for him now.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get to our final segment, our entertainment segment. This is that segment where we tell you what we've been watching, what we've been reading, and what we've been listening to in the last week. Walt, we'll go with watching first. We'll go to you, and we'll kind of circle around with all three of us. What have you been watching this week? What can you recommend or maybe warn the audience not to watch?
Yeah, just a couple things that I'll recommend this week. I'm just about done with the animated series Invincible on Amazon Prime, and it has its slow moments, but for the most part, it's really good. There are a couple things that are a little lame in it that we could bore each other with, but it is a very well done series. The voice acting's phenomenal. So I highly recommend it. The F word does get thrown around a good bit, so don't watch it around the kids. It's not a for kids cartoon, but definitely check that out if you are so inclined to watch something along that line. Also, Amazon Prime is really doing a great job of bringing back a lot of older movies that have been hard to find over the years. And one that I happened across this week that I had kind of it's in my brain as existing, but I've not seen it in years. And I was watching it the other day, The Towering Inferno. And I don't know if you've watched this.
Talk about
Paul
another
Newman,
star-studded cast. Yeah.
Yes, another star-studded cast. I remember when it came out, and I think there were like 14 or 15 pictures along the bottom of the poster of legitimate stars who were in it. So if you enjoy those old 70s movies, this is a really good one. Good pace to it, great acting, well written. I mean, it's not going to have the same special effects that we have today, but it's still very, very good. Another one that I think everybody really needs to watch if you like movies, the great movie War Games from 1983.
Oh, yeah, Matthew Broderick.
And that also is free this month on Amazon Prime. So check those two out if you haven't ever seen them. Definitely need to see them. Matthew Broderick, Alex Sheely, Dabney Coleman.
I don't think it's Alec. I think it's Allie.
Oh, Ali Sheely.
Allie.
Alec and
No,
Ali.
Ali
Alec
Sheedy.
has a very small part in that. Yes, Ali Sheedy and Dabney Coleman. So it's a great movie, and
I love that movie.
I do too. It's one of my favorite movies from my childhood.
I have not done a throwback watch of War Games in probably 20, maybe 25 years. I will check that out because I remember loving that movie when it came out and used to watch it all the time because we had it on VHS.
Yes. Well, and it's one of those that's the technology is definitely 80s technology, so it's a film classic,
Yeah, but you know what? I'll never forget the harrowing moment of the opening scene where they're doing a test to see if people would literally fire nukes when called upon and realize that in a situation, there are people who just could not bring themselves to do it. And it makes sense that you would have a system that could maybe make that decision, but then it scares the crap out of you that the AI might decide, well, we'll go ahead and just nuke the enemy and not worry about the consequences. So great flick.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it was right at the height of the Cold War.
Yep, right in the 80s.
It was very relevant to all of us. So definitely check those two out. And then of course that the Invincible animated series.
As soon as you finish that, we got to talk about it because I've been waiting. I finished it last week, and I have
episode
questions.
left.
I have questions about how it wraps up. So, all right,
we'll talk about it this week.
Doug, do you want to go next, or do you want me to go next?
I'll take a quick stab.
Okay, what are you watching?
We just finished last night on HBO The Mayor of Easttown.
Oh, man, I gotta watch that.
It's really wonderful. It's almost like a summer book read. Like as far as an investment of your time, it's 7 episodes. The acting is incredible. The backstories are really incredible. And living in New Jersey not too far from the general area around Philadelphia that's depicted. Kate Winslet trying to do a Philadelphia accent is a little funny, but it's a really good show. When you said War Games, I thought back to another good '80s show or a movie that I saw just a couple weeks ago was Real Genius.
Val Kilmer.
Yeah, great movie.
It was such a great movie. This last year, some of the series that have kind of helped us through was we really enjoyed Schitt's Creek. I don't know if you guys have talked about that in the past. It's really great, and I am just in love with The Good Place, which is an NBC show.
The Good Place is so amazing. We've talked about it on this season, even just enjoying binging it on Netflix. It's so well written, so clever, and yet so touching and heartwarming, and yet something to learn from it. Just amazing.
It's as good a treatise on philosophy or even theology as what you'll ever find in a book. I
agree.
It's really great.
And I have not talked to anybody who has sat down and watched that who didn't like it.
Yeah.
And it turned me into a huge Kristen Bell fan. I'll tell you that. I think somebody who can be cute and spunky and yet be still self-deprecating and be able to have fun. I'm just like, wow, you're just. Yeah. I'm jealous of her having the time of her life on camera with that show.
And on Disney Plus, I watch Hamilton at least like twice a month, if not more. It's one of the more brilliant pieces of art that I've ever come across.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to dovetail on you. I've been hooked into Mayor of Easttown since episode 1. I stay up every Sunday because it doesn't drop until 10 p.m. just to watch it drop and watch the episode. I watched the finale of the season. I believe it is a limited series, which means it's done. I don't know what they're going to move on to next, if anything. But as far as that story is concerned, so unbelievably good. I've been telling people it's so realistically acted. I almost feel like I'm watching a documentary live unfolding. The reactions, the people, the costume, the wardrobes, the settings where they live. It doesn't feel like I'm watching anything Hollywood. It feels so real and so visceral, and to have a detective/homicide story that keeps you guessing, for me anyway, even to the last episode, and then I was still wrong, that's pretty good. So I give 2 thumbs up, Mayor of Easttown.
It was a great show.
All right.
It really was.
I'm also going to give a shout out, a movie I did not see when it came out, but you know how all the movie streaming services, when you get done watching a movie, it'll pop up something else to watch. A few weeks ago, we showed my father-in-law, who's visiting us from upstate New York, Togo, the story of one of the dogs that did one of the sled runs from Nome, Alaska, to get some much-needed medicine for a cholera. It was a cholera? One of the outbreaks in Nome, Alaska. And, of course, we all know the story of Balto, which is the dog that got the last leg, but Togo actually did far more than any of the other legs of any of the other racers. And if you've never seen Togo on Disney Plus, it's well worth watching, with Willem Dafoe in the lead role. But because we finished that, it said, if you like this movie, you might like Iron Will. So my father-in-law goes, oh, I remember that from the 90s. And so we watched that last night. It was very much a 90s movie. It felt like, looked like, acted like a 90s movie. It still was really good, based in part, for the most part, on a true story of a kid whose father ended up dying in a sledding accident. And so they were going to lose the farm in their South Dakota town. And this 17-year-old kid decides to enter a dog race from up northwest Canada all the way through to the United States. And Kevin Spacey's in it, and a couple other people you would recognize. But for the most part, a little chintzy, a little cheesy, definitely a Disney schmaltz, but still, you know what? If you got younger kids, they would probably really enjoy it. I didn't mind it, so I did. I'll give it. I would give it 3 out of 5 stars. It held my entertainment and it held my attention. 2 more, because May 25th fell in this same week, which is of the anniversary of Star Wars. We watched Star Wars on May 25th to commemorate the anniversary of the day that it hit the theaters and created that phenomenon. And my final one, for you Daniel Radcliffe / Harry Potter fans, stumbled across this one called Guns Akimbo. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a quirky independent flick that has a great social commentary on what we're watching on the internet and how we treat each other online and what we are thinking is entertainment. There's an entire underground group that puts people at war with one another, and their people are betting on who's going to win in a true to the death combat online. And Daniel Radcliffe, who plays an American with a great American accent, said you used to troll these people in this chat room and eventually gets called out and has 2 handguns surgically attached to his hands and is forced to compete in this sort of weird Mad Max Thunderdome world. But very funny, very witty. It is a little bit graphic comic book wise, but really entertaining. I was blown away just the whole time. I didn't think I was going to like it. Just fantastic start to finish.
What's it called?
Guns Akimbo. Check it out. Daniel Radcliffe just came out. It was one of those straight to streaming. I think it was on either HBO Max or Amazon Prime, but it was called Guns Akimbo. So much fun. I'd watch it again in a heartbeat. So those are the ones I've been watching in this last week. All right, let's quickly move to reading. Walt, what you been reading, if anything, this week?
There's a great book that I had read a little while ago, and I've been meaning to mention it. It's by Warren Ellis, who has done a bunch of the graphic novels, but it's called Gun Room, and it's just a one-off novel that he wrote, and it is really fantastic. It's just kind of spellbinding, really, really well done, well written. I hope that he has a follow-on to it with the characters that he had in there, but it is really, really good. He has another novel out too called Crooked Little Vein, which I've bought but haven't read yet. But Warren Ellis has an astounding imagination and is definitely worth checking out in those 2 books.
All right. Doug, you got anything that you can recommend book-wise? Anything literary you're reading?
I haven't really been into any books in the last couple weeks. I am looking forward though to reading the new book on the Secret Service by Carol Lenning, or is that her name? I can't remember. That's come out. I've seen her do a couple of interviews, and it looks like she did some really interesting in-depth reporting.
All right, cool.
The Secret Service over the years.
I'll take a note on that and check it out and make sure I got the right title, and we'll put that in there in our show notes. I have been reading, because we have an interview tomorrow on a separate podcast my wife and I do called the Marriage Fit Podcast. We're going to be interviewing the author Viviana Coles, who just wrote the book, The 4 Intimacy Styles. And obviously, being a relationship podcast that my wife and I do, we've done the 5 love languages. This is what she bills as something similar, but for those of you who are maybe having some issues in the bedroom. And it's the 4 intimacy styles, and maybe you're missing each other, and the reason why things have grown cold is because you're thinking one way, she's thinking the other, and vice versa. And this might help you put yourself in a little bit better communication to try to get things fired back up. So we've got that interview tomorrow, and I've been reading that to get ready for the interview, and then that episode will be out within a week or so of this episode. So check that out if you're a follower of the Marriage Fit Podcast. That's all I've got on my reading docket. So we'll wrap this up with what are we listening to? Walt, we'll go to you first. What are you listening to, podcast and or music?
Well, I keep, of course, every week listening to our good friends over at Radio Labyrinth. Another great episode this week. And, of course, in real time, Tim and his wife had their first baby this week.
Yay, congratulations.
Yep, absolutely. And Tim had talked about that a little bit, of what it will be like being a new father for the first time at age 50.
At age 50.
So we look forward to having him back to see how those predictions have gone. And so congratulations to he and Caitlin. That's really fantastic. And just an adorable kid, Gil. So congratulations to them. But he, of course, was absent this week from Radio Labyrinth, but another great episode from those guys. Also, I've kind of gotten back into Small Town Murder. It's a long episode this week, but those guys are hilarious. The cases that they talk about are just horrific, but 2 comedians talking about a horrific murder in a backwater small town provide some good entertainment and a little bit of lighthearted humor, not at the expense of the dead or their families, but at the expense of everyone else. So if you're into true crime, that's a good one. It is not safe for work, not safe for kids, but Small Town Murder is definitely worth checking out.
All right. Excellent. Anything music wise you got?
Oh man, I've listened to so much music. Old Sea Brigade released their album recently, and Ben, who is behind that band, was on with us last season. So I would encourage you to check that out if you are interested in some new music that doesn't really fit in a box anywhere. Then, of course, I'm also getting ready for October. I think it's 22nd. Dead and Company will be in Atlanta, and tickets are on sale now. But I got mine, got great seats, and looking forward to going to that. So I'm looking at what I've loaded recently to my phone. Some Grateful Dead, some Tom Petty. More of my own usual
The
stuff.
usual. All right.
Yes, exactly.
Doug, as we are getting very close to the end of the show, we'll wrap up on your of the 3 entertainment segments. What have you been maybe listening to that we could turn our audience on to?
Oh man, what have I not been listening to?
True. You do a music reaction video or a podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited. For the first time since the pandemic started, we're going to get to go see Bruce Hornsby and the Noisemakers. They're doing an outdoor gig near the Jersey Shore. I always, when Walt mentioned Dead and Company, I remember when Bruce used to play with them, and I've always loved his music, and been listening to that. And on 2 of the ones that I listened to this past week, I was really surprised by. I did a Queen song. Now I can't think of which one it was. It was the March of the Black Queen from Queen 2. And I had never listened to anything earlier than Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen before. And their style, even in the early 70s, just blew me away. How great those recordings from the early 70s sound is astounding to me. It's a whole different experience than listening to sort of the overproduced stuff for that's happening these days. It's remarkable. I also was listening to some old Stargazer this week, some Dio and all those guys.
Wow.
So for the channel, but it's funny when you spend all your day listening to music, you tend not as your job, you tend not to listen to music in your spare time, because it just sort of you've done that, so it's like recreating where you work. So I like I'm a Sirius XM subscriber. I like listening to talk radio, like news talk, and I like this guy Smirkanish on their POTUS channel. It's on demand. I can kind of fit it in, and so it's nice to hear great interviews and sort of a down the middle approach to news as I'm kind of going through my day when I'm not wanting to listen to music.
I was going to say he's more he's a little bit hard to pin down on where his politics are from what I've listened to.
Yeah, I've been listening to him pretty regularly because I'm local to Philadelphia, the Philadelphia market. He's a Philadelphia guy for a good decade. He's an old school Reagan Republican that just doesn't have a home anymore. So that's kind of where he, in a sentence, I don't think he would argue with that. Actually, his favorite politician, I've heard him talk about this, is Poppy Bush.
Oh,
okay.
That was his favorite. That was his guy when he was growing up. But yeah, so that's what I kind of listen to here on the fly and catch him where I can.
No, Mike Smirkanish he's been around for a long time and syndicated, and you can pick him up almost in any market. And today with the internet, you can find him anywhere. So
yeah,
well worth listening to his analysis of news of the day with as much as he's been through. That's what I love is the guys have been around for just a little bit longer. It's not just a hot take. it's a hot take
Sure.
through the prism of some experience as well.
But his Sirius XM radio show is a fun listen, because he'll especially when he brings in authors, they do like 30-minute book interviews, just right in the middle of the day. So that's sort of my oasis away from tunes as I'm like doing my walks and other types of stuff. So that's what I've been listening to.
Just to make sure we don't miss anything, any podcasts that you would recommend, any that you like to listen to, maybe on music theory, or just in general, anything that you find entertaining?
I about the only podcast I listen to all the time. Actually, this is going to sound very interesting. I listen to Wait, Don't Tell Me. NPR.
Yes.
I've my wife and I has listened to them. Actually, we used to be Prairie Home Companion people. Like every week, we loved that show. Garrison Keillor's reminds me of one of my uncles. But I also listen to this podcast from a guy called The Thinking Atheist, and I work in a church, and I find his upbringing and my upbringing to be very similar, and he's reached slightly different conclusions than I have, but he's a gifted broadcaster, and it's always very interesting content. And
I've listened to him as well.
Yeah.
And I spent a year in seminary and active in my church and everything. And even though, like you said, we don't always end up in the same place. He's definitely worth listening to just to see what his thought process is.
Yeah, I got into him. I got caught on a train going across Pennsylvania, and I didn't have enough Wi-Fi strength to stream video, so I was just scrolling whatever I could find. And it was back during the Olympics, the last time the Olympics were going, and he was railing against something about how they always thank God. And you're the one that just swam that lap faster than anybody. Why don't you thank yourself? That was his take, and it kind of got me. Okay, he's got a great voice, and he's like I said, a gifted broadcaster. But he has really unique and interesting topics to discuss, and so that's one that I've kind of kept checking in on as well.
Excellent. I've always been, and I always encourage people to listen to alternative perspectives and points of view, because it only helps you decide whether you've got holes in your perspective or it reinforces your perspective. So always good to have a challenge to where you believe.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll go quickly because we're running out of time. 60MW podcast. They had their entertainment show drop this week from across the pond in the UK. Some great stuff. They talk about the movies and documentaries and TV shows they've been watching in the last couple of months, and they even recommend some. Measuring the Score. Our last week guest, I spent some time going through their podcast and listening to Chris Lott and his wife talk about movie scores and what makes them good or not good and whether they work for the movie or not. That's been fun. Obviously, I listened to the Daily Doug. Just got done listening to today's episode on The Longest Day by Iron Maiden, which, references The Longest Day, D-Day. And
what's their most recent album?
It was Dance of the Dead. Is that what it's called?
Okay. Yeah, that hasn't been too long.
Yeah, 2016.
I almost... this one came out in 2006, and I almost called it one of their
Book of
newer
Souls.
albums.
Book of Souls. And it was that's the Dance of that. Book of Souls is the name of the most recent album. Came out in 2016, and it had the story of the UK or the British Empire's first foray into an airship, and you did a special on that particular show.
One. Empire of the Clouds.
Empire of the Clouds. What an amazing song!
Yeah, that's one of my favorites of theirs that I've ever done.
I had not heard that before, and when you did that episode, I went and downloaded the album, and I was listening to that. I mentioned that a few weeks back it's a double CD. They wrote these songs that are so long. It was a double CD. They're like, well, let's just go ahead and go to CD number 2. Unbelievably good. Just so amazing. These guys in their 60s rocking as hard as when they were younger, but putting such, I argue, much more nuance. There's a lot more detail and thought into how they're creating their songs.
Well, he can't sing a high B for an entire song like he used to. So now he can still do it, but they have to pick and choose their spots. So it actually helps them with their musical choices and their pacing.
I just think there's just the level of sophistication, and to listen to Iron Maiden still putting out great music. Just what an amazing band they are. And finally, a group we will be interviewing in a couple of weeks. I still love them. If you are into New Age at all, sort of relaxing, kick back, relax, let the music just sort of take you to a new place. I still cannot get enough of the group 2002. Been a fan of them since actually the year 2002. They keep putting out new music. Just a fantastic New Age group to check out. And that's all I've got. Walt, let's wrap this up with a bow. For folks who just tuned into us for the very first time and they want to know a little bit more about us, where can they go? Where can they find us?
As always, the best place you can go is our website, which is thewilderride.com. And you can find our bios. You can find a list of our past guests, our past episodes, what we've got coming up here in the future. And of course, we referenced earlier in the show that season 1 and 2, we broke down the movies of Gene Wilder, Young Frankenstein, and Blazing Saddles 1 minute at a time. So you want to go check out those couple hundred episodes and hear what we and many of our guests had to say. Also, you want to check out our Facebook, which is facebook.com/thewilderride. Follow us there, and then a button's going to come up to join our listeners group. And the listeners group is full of all kinds of awesome people who are friends of the show, and we just talk about movies and Gene Wilder and what's going on in entertainment. And of course, we have our weekly poll there where you can vote on what idiotic movie I have to review the next week on the show. So those are the two best places. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter, even though we're not as active there. But we are The Wilder Ride everywhere you look.
And as I always say, take a moment to rate and review any of the things you listen to and or watch, subscribe, and please take a second to share. It doesn't take a moment. Most of your listening programs or applications that you're using to listen to a podcast or watch a video, you've got the option to share, put it on your social media, let the world know what it is you found entertaining, help all of us grow our audiences. And I want to do a quick shout out and a thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers. You guys have been fantastic for us. And I named them last week, so I'm just going to say, if you'd like to be a Patreon subscriber, you can go to patreon.com/The Wilder Ride. Whether it's $1 a month or more, we really appreciate you guys continuing to keep the lights on here for us in the studios of The Wilder Ride. And you want to come back next week as we get ready to say our farewells. We'll say goodbye to Doug in just a second, but I will tell you, next week, it's a wild card. We've got it wide open. So between me and Walt, we're going to have to try to figure out who to plug in there. Walt, you got any ideas?
I've got an idea.
Okay, good. So good. It'll be new to me when we come back here next week. Doug Helvering, Professor Doug Helvering, music composer, classically trained, YouTube channel, The Daily Doug. Thank you so much for being here on The Wilder Ride.
It's been my pleasure. This was a fun time, guys.
For the folks who may have missed it
Doug.
the first time, tell us once again, how do people follow you?
My name is Doug Helvering. You can find me online at my website, which is rdouglashelvering.com, or just put my name in the Google machine. If you put Doug Helvering in the Google machine, there's not too many people that have my name, thankfully. So you'll find me and take a look at the YouTube stuff, and that's what we're working on most actively right now. And we're having a great time.
Thank you so much for being here. It's been our
Thank you, Doug.
distinct pleasure to have you on our show.
Happy to be here.
All right, guys, come on back next week for a brand new episode of The Wilder Ride Listener's Lounge. Doug, that was amazing.
Thank you so
It's
much.
been surreal because I'm watching your face. I'm watching you talk to us. We're having this great conversation. I'm like, that's the guy I watch on YouTube like every day. How weird.
Well, yeah, I'm around. It always takes a while for people. Like I can come off as a little naive. And because when I get into teaching mode, I really am like check this out. It's gonna be okay. Just hang with me. I'm gonna explain this. If you don't get it, it's fine. I'll tell you another.